Hello and welcome to the HR People Pod, the CIPD's fortnightly podcast bringing you the topical stories and expert insights on the world of work. If it's troubling HR professionals or they're moving to embrace it, we'll be talking about it. My name's David D'Souza, Director of Profession at CIPD. Before we start, I'd like to wish happy birthday to my wife. This will mean nothing to her because she still hasn't listened to this podcast a single time, even though she regularly asks me for podcast recommendations. But joining me here today, two voices that my wife will never hear. The first is... Come on, Katie, bring it home.
Hi, I'm Katie Ovey. I'm the Chief People Officer at One Advanced.
Fantastic. And joining us live from Belfast, we have...
I'm Rob Rees. I'm the Group Head of People and Culture for a hospitality group in Northern Ireland called the Hastings Hotel Group.
And happy birthday to your wife.
Indeed.
I mean, it makes no difference. This is just valueless conversation at this point. But the sentiment, I think, always counts. So, Katie, it's a pleasure to have you back. And Rob, absolutely delighted to have you on for the first time. So I was across in Belfast a couple of months back now. And Rob and I were chatting and I thought he'd make a perfect guest. So I'm delighted that we've been able to make that happen. So before we start, just want to know a little bit. It's been a momentous week. But what have you been watching, reading, consuming at the moment? Could be a book, could be you've seen a great movie, could be you've learned a wonderful thing that's going to help you in your role. Rob, I'll start with you.
I didn't know this question was coming, but this is going to paint, I'm not sure this is going to paint a very good picture of me, but
excellent.
Yeah. So reading, I've got quite into Jeffrey Archer and his William Warwick books as a way to switch off. So don't know what that says about me, but anyway. And then watching, being a massive foodie, I have been really proud to be British this week with the finals of the Great British Menu, and seeing some really great food being served at Blenheim Palace was definitely a highlight. I was trying to spot some people that I knew from the TV, but they managed to avoid the cameras apart from one of them. And then just consuming lots of rugby. So that's what I've been up to this week.
Is Jeffrey Archer still alive? He says innocently. Is he still alive and writing?
I have no idea, but I don't know why I feel that it's so controversial that I'm reading his novels, I should say at this point, but he's quite a good writer.
Katie, what about you?
I think very similar to a lot of the population right now, really trying to keep up on AI and what's happening in the world of AI, trying to educate myself more and more around that. The news is always an interesting one to keep an eye on at the moment and see what's going on in all the various different places. And from a TV standpoint, we've been watching our way through adolescence as well, as I think a lot of people are doing, which obviously raises all sorts of different topics and thoughts as well.
So I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and I was considering sitting down to watch it with her. Is it going to be perfect for that, or is it going to be? Could you explain a little bit about it for anyone who has missed out on the noise?
Perfect would be an interesting word to use for it. I'm not sure there's anything about it that has perfection. I think, but it's a really interesting topic in terms of what is going on, especially for teenagers at the moment. I think it's something that all of us as parents should explore with our children in terms of what is actually happening. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but it's about a 13-year-old boy who ends up committing a murder of a fellow schoolmate who is a female, and some of the things that are happening around that in terms of misogynistic influences, different ways emojis are used to represent various elements of that. Also family dynamics, how that plays in, and bullying, and also how that plays into to what's happening in teenagers' worlds right now. It's a deeply thought-provoking series, well worth watching, and what it has done, I think, for a lot of parents is open people's eyes to what is going on that we may not even consider is going on for teenagers at the moment, and how many different influences there are and potential really serious ramifications of that.
Education rather than entertainment, potentially. I'll have a chat with her. I think that's always the best way to do it. So we're going to kick off and get into the depths of the conversation here during what's been a really interesting week, and we're going to touch on that as well. So, kicking us off, the CIPD is sponsoring a new report with Windmark to investigate what C-suite professionals are focusing on in 2025. So, it surveys CEOs, CFOs, CHROs, CPOs to understand what the opportunities and challenges facing organisations are and how they're prepping for them. There were 4 key areas outlined. So, change and uncertainty. And we've obviously had a week where there's been a massive economic announcement coming from the President of the United States, which has worldwide ramifications and has sent the markets into what can reasonably be described as turmoil. So trillions of pounds worth of value wiped off markets, billions wiped off individual organisations, and a really different economic forecast probably for most nations, including the US, but President Trump has been very clear that this is part of putting the US first. So there's a lot of change there, but equally that's overlaying on the implementation of and governance around AI, existing skills and talents gaps, and what you need to do in them to address growth areas and opportunities, and investing in a workforce to prepare to take those opportunities. That's an overwhelming amount of stuff for an organisation to attempt to be juggling. It's an overwhelming amount of stuff at times for individuals to have to be trying to sense make around. So within your organisations, if you think back through your career, how do you go through the process of placing your bets? Or do you have to try and solve for all of the uncertainty in the world and all the stuff that you know is going to happen and the short term and the long term? Rob, because there's a wry smile on your face, I'm going to start with you.
Thinking about earlier in my career and how I placed my bets, I think one of the things that relates to this for me is Brexit and the uncertainty that presented at the time, especially being based in Northern Ireland. It provides a certain degree of challenge. Or at least it did at the time, and still does to this day. But one of the things that are really concerning this week is obviously the tariffs and what that means for not just the UK but also for Northern Ireland being geographically sharing a land border with the EU. And all of the networks and supply distribution and everything that comes in with that, because a lot of our produce comes in through the Republic. So we're not going to have a 10% tariff on everything. We might have a 20% tariff on certain things. And being a hotelier and being in the space of creating great experiences, American bourbon, whiskey, all of those things, not to mention some linen, and some other key things that you wouldn't even think about, are suddenly got a lot more expensive. But equally, I also think whilst what the president announced yesterday was his starting point, I don't necessarily think that's the end point that we all end up with. I think the Prime Minister has played a particular blinder in terms of trying to keep calm and carry on. And I think that will hopefully go in our favour. But I don't think what he announced yesterday will be the final tariff that is actually imposed on the world economy.
So really quickly on that, Rob, you kind of talked about keep calm and carry on. Is that kind of your mantra internally as well? Because you've got rising costs, increasing uncertainty, plus you had that blend of things that you would have known you wanted to do anyway. So we talked about the skills challenges around catering staff, people working in preparation, but also throughout your supply chain. Has it changed what you're doing this week, or do you just go, that's another complex factor and we'll wait and see?
I think it's a bit of both. I think there's a complex element of it, but there is so much uncertainty around it at the moment that we don't really have a clear enough picture. Our chairman constantly refers to being ahead of the curve, so staying ahead of the curve. Whereas what we have within our organisation is the value of having sustainable success. I think we are in a very different place where we are looking for that incremental growth to stay ahead of inflation, to not open another 100 hotels, but to do what we do in the luxury market very well and continue that steady growth. And I think companies that are, or organizations that are going for exponential growth are in a far different position with all of a sudden understanding, right, I've just gone into the US market. Well, now I'm going to have to put my prices up. How does that look? How does that feel? How does that operate in that space is very different to what we're at. We are trying to sustain our success. So whilst we might not be the biggest consumer of bourbon or the biggest consumer of whiskey, a lot of the beverages that we serve, some of the spices that go into our food, some of the linen that's on our beds, all of those things may now incur an extra cost that is not exactly budget friendly, a 5-star hotel, but at the same time, we are operating on what is quite lean margins to make sure we can offer value for your money. So I think in short, what is a very waffly answer, David, but in short, I think it depends on the organization. From us, we see the uncertainty and we try and be ahead of it. But if you are going for that growth phase, if you're in that seed phase, if you're going for a B or a C funding round, that must be chaos right now. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out for those type of organizations.
Katie, is it chaos?
It can be. I think one of the things, just reflecting back, throughout my career, is you can never actually predict what's going to happen. So you almost have to expect the unexpected, to build on one of Rob's points. I think if I think back through my career, there was a big push to offshoring at a certain stage. And then from a tech standpoint, things moved from on-premise to the cloud, which was another shift in the industry that I work in. Then we had 2008, and then we had Brexit, COVID, etc. And it's just, this pace of change is just rapidly accelerating. So I think whereas once it would have been possible to predict some of these things, I think we now work in an environment where it's not predictable and we have to be prepared to expect the unexpected. And the only thing that we can do is prepare as best as we can. And doing things like preparing our people in the best way for them to be able to navigate through some of these changes, making sure that as an organization you have contingency. To the point around funding as well, that's really important in terms of trying to prepare and have as much contingency as possible from a cash perspective, so you have choice rather than you are in a position where you have to raise funds in a certain way. And also, where possible, scenario planning, what if, and if this happens, what will we do, so that you have the ability to be a bit more agile. I think for us as people professionals, though, the preparing our people is really important. And if we think about the introduction of AI and the skills and the talent gap, we don't know how this is going to impact people in every industry, in every country right now. But the only thing that we can really do is prepare our organizations and our employees to have the skills that they really need to in order to be as resilient as possible as those changes happen.
And it's really difficult, isn't it? Like, everyone's busy. So you can have people kind of saying, look, I don't want to deal with the hypotheticals. But to your point around scenario planning, having good scenario planning, it allows you to take the pressure off decisions in the moment, doesn't it?
Yep, it absolutely does. If you, one of the things, I mean, we talk about this quite a lot whenever we do things like crisis management as well. If you have a plan that you can follow, now that you might have many different plans based on the scenario, but if you have a plan that you can follow and you've thought that through, it takes away a lot of the stress and anxiety and leads to better decision making in the moment. So thinking about things like that from a wider strategy standpoint, keeping that strategy updated on a regular basis to incorporate those elements really, really helps in terms of preparedness and the ability to be able to navigate through it. And one thing I think is really certain is that unless you're agile as an organization, there will be headwinds and things that happen that you can't navigate through.
Yeah, and it gives people confidence internally, doesn't it? If you're able to say, look, we knew this might happen, so here's the plan.
Yeah,
that's a lot better than we're thinking through it and it's massive and we didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
So if you're going to choose between those two scenarios, go for the approaching it in the way that you've described.
That's certainly my preference anyway.
Don't go for the one that causes mass panic and uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think it's a top tip. You touched a little bit on transfer of skills and learning and the impact of AI, and that's the next area that we're going to talk about now. So a recent FT article explored two possible scenarios. The most positive of those was we use AI to accelerate progression, and it doesn't compromise the acquisition of knowledge or the quality of the application of the knowledge, which I think is equally as important. The gloomy end was, or the different scenario, was AI taking away a lot of learning opportunities that people have, and people not having the expertise that they need to make good situational judgment calls. It's particularly pertinent, I think, in a profession like ours, where loads of it is situational judgment calls. People think about the profession as following process, but actually how you follow that process, whether you step outside of that process, and what you do in really complex situations with multiple stakeholders where it's about human emotion and motivation, is what makes it fascinating and fun to work in, but also what makes it, I think, more challenging than some others. How do you see this panning out over the next few years, Katie? Are you worried that the next generation of practitioners, maybe not now, but coming through in kind of 5 to 10 years, are going to miss out on some of the experiences that you might have had as you grew? Or do you think actually they're going to have an advantage?
Yeah, and I think it's much broader than people practitioners. I think it's in every role, in every organisation. This is something that is a super interesting problem statement to think through, and something that we're thinking through quite a lot as an organisation. We've actually been talking about what kind of skills are really important in a future AI-driven and AI-supported world, and how actually soft skills have always got a bit of a bad reputation, or they're secondary to some of the technical or kind of deep functional skills. But I think that's entirely untrue and completely reversing if I look forward to the future. And we've been talking about what we call the 6 C's of human skills, and they're things like critical thinking, curiosity, courage, customer co-creation, change management, and communication.
I was really impressed that you got. I mean, if I were doing that, I would have gone the 3 C's, and even then, I'd have gone the first 2. And there's another one, 6, just straight off the bat. That's been well rehearsed.
We talk about it a lot.
Apparently so.
But these are the things that we think are going to make the difference in terms of being able to navigate through an AI-driven world, and they're the things that only humans can bring. And your question really, dug into that first one, which is critical thinking, and this is the difference between what can you do and what should you do. And that's a really important distinction for people to have that ability to not just assess what is possible to do, but what is the right thing to do. And I'm really concerned, actually, that our ability to critical think is going to go down with the use of AI, and for a couple of reasons. One of them is you develop critical thinking skills by layering knowledge. You start with the foundational knowledge, and then you build from there as you progress through your career. And then you understand how everything works. So you understand, is it working as it's supposed to be? What might be missing? Is it producing the right outcome? And AI is going to take away some of those foundational layers of knowledge, because it will do it for a lot of people in the future. And that means, do you really understand what's going on, and can you really critically think about it? And then there was some really interesting research that I read, which is even more concerning, that those of us who already have critical thinking skills are less inclined to use them if AI is in the mix, because we naturally assume that it's going to be accurate. So we've got a double whammy there, I think, in the workforce of the future, when both humans have less ability to be able to critically think and less inclination to use it. And I think that's a really worrying place to be.
Yeah. And Rob, I'm going to come to you and just put an extra spin on that, which is, it requires a degree of expertise to understand whether you are getting the right recommended answer from AI. If you are unable to acquire that expertise, does the risk go up disproportionately in terms of poor decision making?
I think there's a couple of things there. One thing that springs to mind is the Netflix film where the AI robot started killing everybody. I think that's the most extreme risk that you've got there, David. But
what film's that? That just seems like the world's vaguest recommendation.
It's Cassandra, right?
Yes.
The series.
Thank you, Katie, because you literally just saved me from what I couldn't remember the title of.
I love a good dystopian film.
I was like, is it the Terminator, iRobot? I was like,
it's all of those things.
All of these things.
Yeah, and the AI bot had a shutdown phrase that's only it knew, and it changed itself. And anyway, but that's the risk if you submerge yourself in this technology without necessarily understanding that critical thinking piece that Katie's just articulated. And even listen to Katie there, I realised I'm going to have to find something else to listen to as I walk the dogs this week, because I'm not going to listen to my own voice. But I think Katie makes some really valid points around this isn't just about every role and every organisation that's affected. It's also wider society. That for me is the big piece, because we are in the business. And I would argue that every business makes money from connections and makes money from relationships. It's about how we harness the ability, for me, that AI provides in the right way. And we spend a lot of time, certainly as a HR team, thinking about how automation can make our lives easier, and how we can use AI. And certainly I learn lots myself from AI around how best do I structure a letter, or how well do I structure an email. Those type of things take seconds now compared to deep thinking. But it is that ability to have not only the critical thinking piece that Katie talks about, but also having the social and emotional intelligence to understand the impact and what to do with that information. And I think, to go back to the original question, the AI piece in general totally resonates with us in terms of hospitality and tourism. You have no idea how many people turn up at our front desk having a chat GPT. Other AI tools are available, but they rock up and they have a pure itinerary of what to do in Belfast or in Northern Ireland, purely from AI. And then our concierges and our receptionists are busy helping them to bring that to life, which is huge. But the scary piece for me is, are we losing the ability to have a conversation? Are we putting more things in the way of, do you know what, just having a coffee? And I think as a male, you tend not to have those conversations, and it's even more excuse not to have those conversations in some aspects. And that's the bit that scares me.
So it's almost like we've planned this episode, almost like it. So next up, we're talking about communication in the workplace. Rob, thank you for that really easy handoff. So new research by ACAS has revealed that many employees are unhappy with video calls and messaging apps. 1 in 3 dislike video calls. 1 in 4 find platforms like Teams, Zoom or Zoom irritating. 5th found phone calls irritating. And 1 in 10 don't like face-to-face conversations either. I'm not sure what's left by the time we've kind of knocked all those out. It's worth saying that this is a method, a way of communicating that has obviously proliferated in many organisations post-pandemic. So it was there as a channel for many, but many are using it now as a norm. And it's also worth pointing out, as ever, that this is disproportionately impacting some parts of the economy, primarily knowledge work, and others more than some other areas. So, Rob, you will be in and around your people today. You'll be chatting to them. I've had the privilege of kind of watching you interact with your team, and that knowledge there in that kind of face-to-face contact is obviously a premium. But before we retreat and go nothing works in terms of communications, what are the real issues that underlie dissatisfaction? Do we think it's a platform problem? Do we think it's the way they're used? Or do we think actually this is a fundamental shift in the way that people are communicating, not only within work, but outside of it, mobile phones, devices, video calling? And I won't ask what should be done, because I think that's too big a question. But how do you build effective communication between colleagues within workplaces?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think there's a lot that potentially to unpick between people's personal preferences around how to communicate, and then perhaps some deeper things as well around, do we have too many meetings in general? Do we have too many types of communication in general and not enough time for focused, productive work? And is that what people are getting frustrated by? I don't think there's enough to be able to understand what is underlining some of the feedback that was given through that. I think one of the things that is definitely true is the way technology has been designed isn't necessarily in line with the way our brains and human biology is meant to function, and that at some point causes stresses, apps and mobile phone technology and social media that all, not all of us, but a lot of us use, the notifications were designed to be addictive. There's constant triggering of dopamine. We go through our lives permanently distracted with context switching all the time, and we lose productivity at each stage of it. And with people working in more hybrid or remote environments, often there's more need to have the things like Teams and Zoom and messaging in a way that we do it because we feel that we should, and we should stay connected. But do we need to think of a different way to be able to work with people in different types of environments? And I think it's choosing what communication is really important for what you're trying to achieve, and not trying to force in a technology that is solving the wrong problem. And giving people enough time to do that deep focused work where they're really concentrating and they're not distracted. But every day we're training our brains to do something differently in the way that we consume technology and media outside of work as much as inside of work. And I think that is causing just problems in general with communication. And Rob, a bit to your point too, which is we put so many barriers. It looks like we're communicating all the time, but are we really connecting? And is technology getting in the way of some of those really true moments that matter, of connecting and collaborating and producing something that's greater than the sum of our parts?
And Katie, you're absolutely completely and right. I think one of the breakthrough moments that we had as an executive team, I stood at the front of a room and said, I want all of your mobile phones, because the whole distraction, the whole notification I can see on my screen right now, I've got 7 notifications from LinkedIn. It's driving me crazy that there's a 7 there, but I'm being intentional with my attention. And that for me is a big piece around what we did as a leadership team, is say, right, we have a few hours here to enjoy each other's company. We need to be in the room. So let's associate being with each other in a fun environment. So I took everybody's phone off them and put it in a box and put it on the side, and then took them all and we did archery and whatnot. And then we came back and had a board meeting. It was the best board meeting we've been involved with, because we were all intentional with our attention. And I think that's the one big thing around, we are constantly surrounded by ping, vibrate, ding for our email. It's like, whoa, where are we going? And even in an environment where we don't necessarily have any remote work or any hybrid work, but we do have people based at different sites where, yes, they're still using Teams or they're still doing that. The value of getting people in a room is important, but equally associating that interaction with something that's fun, not like going back to 2016 with death by PowerPoint, and you sat there going, well, why did I drive? Because this was an email. There has to be some focus and some outcome, not goal, because you might not hit the goal, but you always have an outcome. What's your desired outcome from bringing these set of people together? And where are you trying to move to? And then how do you supplement that with, okay, allowing them to some freedom to get out of their way and allowing them to do what they're great at, to create, to innovate, to serve the guests, to create that experience, and empowering that conversation and create creativity, I think is one of my biggest priorities as a leader in this organization.
We're going to come on to the final topic now, which is really strongly linked, actually. So we're going to be talking about body doubling. Someone's pointed out that Body Double was actually a 1984 neo-noir erotic thriller. So if you are giggling at it, just like have a think about your IT policy in your organisation before you kind of go for that one and follow that down a rabbit hole. But we're not talking about that Brian De Palma film starring Melanie Griffith. That would be far too niche for this. We're talking.
You know a lot about this film.
We do more background research than the way I describe it may lead people to believe. It's probably every single time I step in this room, I do a disservice to the team. But body doubling is a technique to improve focus and motivation. So it involves working on a task in the presence of another person. either physically or virtually, who may or may not be working on the same task, but the idea is that it helps create a degree of focus and a work environment. I've heard it seems like a spin-off of what I've heard described before as accountability buddies, where actually you're making commitments. They may be your commitments, but you're making them to another person. And linked to the psychological principle of social facilitation. We always saying, is it a thing? Is this a thing that's happening everywhere? So, Katie, is your organisation full of body doubles? Being really clear, not the neo-noir erotic thriller. Rob, is it the same for you, or do you just think this might be a good idea that might be useful for some people? So, Rob, I'll come to you first on this one.
I think it is. I think it definitely is a thing. I get more energy from, and I'm able to do more deep work if I'm sharing an office with somebody or I'm sat next door to them. But equally, there are times where I need some headspace of, okay, I just need to go and sit somewhere quiet and be by myself to think about this. That deep thinking time is really critical. But if I'm preparing for something, or I am in the throes of something that requires my attention, I am much better having a colleague to my left or right than being sat in my lonely office in head office, because I'm much more productive because they're normally keeping me accountable. I think it does help if you think about how different people operate and what their neurology is. If they need that quiet space, we as an organisation need to facilitate that. But equally, we have a culture that's very orientated around the team. I will always advocate for the team. So it's always about making sure that team ethos is right, but equally people have the space that they need to achieve the outcomes that they need to achieve.
Katie, for you, organisation full of body doubles, double the headcount.
So I don't think I've seen this as an organisational practice or policy that's been put into place. I think individuals often work out what's right for them. I think one of the things is your ability to be able to focus and how you're best productive is a really individual thing, and what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for someone else. I also thought of the accountability buddy, the gym accountability buddy. I was speaking to someone the other day who said they have swapped one of their shoes with somebody else, and they take it home with them from the gym, and then you feel you have to show up to the gym because you have the other person's other shoe. So it gives you that sense of accountability. So I started thinking about those things as I was thinking about this one. But I think it really depends on each individual. And I think people come to their own rhythms around that too. So for some people, it's really helpful to have someone who is sitting there and stopping them from getting distracted. For others, having someone there that actually often they get on well with can be more of a distraction because you start to chat about things and actually you need some deep focused work. So
yeah, and particularly if they were, for instance, a classically trained opera singer and they just burst into song. Katie, if that were a thing, do you know anyone who's a classically trained opera singer?
I don't.
You don't. Is that what you're going for? Right. Okay. I'm hoping that next time you're on, we'll be able to see the full breadth of your talents. We've spoken about, actually, it's really important that talent's nurtured in different ways. Everyone learns different things at different times. So that's all for today. So I'd like to thank Rob for his first appearance on this. It's brilliant. Katie, we're looking forward to having you back because I've now built that up. It's been brilliant, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with our listeners. We'll include a link to a number of useful resources the CIPD provides in the speaker notes for this show, so do make sure that you kind of look at the follow-up information as well. And we'll publish new episodes of this every fortnight, so please do tell your friends. There's no point telling your family because even my wife doesn't listen, just to make that point one more time. And you can catch up with anything else that you want on demand. Final thing from me. We probably don't plug the CIPD enough on this, given the nature of it. If you are a member, you can look forward over the coming months to having digital credentials to represent your membership grade online, which we think will be a massive step forward. We've never been asked for that. And secondly, coming up very soon, we will be taking out of pilot and putting into common usage the next upgrade of Buddy, which is our AI solution to help you get the resources that you need at the speed that you need them. I'm really excited about that. I've been watching the latest results come out from the pilot, and we've stepped that right up. It's really exciting. So we want you to be excited about what we're doing. If I don't communicate that, there's no chance of that happening. So please do keep a lookout for that, because we want to keep providing you with what you need at the speed that you need it and the recognition that you have for your skills and expertise. My name's David D'Souza. Thank you very much for your time.